want to make sure this is closed so we don't get drowned out by the birdies. Birds around here, very loud. It looks like we don't have anybody. Oh, it's because I'm not the host. I can't see if anyone's here. All right. Angela, can you go ahead and let people in?
Yes.
Can you make me the co-host so I can see things?
Yeah, let me do that right now.
So I can see things. Okay. Hello, everyone. Good morning if you're on the West Coast, and good afternoon if you're on the East Coast. I see we have a couple of new people here today, so welcome if it's your first time. This is The Filmmaker's Life. My name is Joanne Butcher. I have a company called Filmmaker Success, and I coach filmmakers around anything to do with business and sales and marketing and fundraising and all of those good things that filmmakers really would rather not have to deal with. So today my guest is Josh Doke, and this is the first time that I've met Josh face to face. I guess we've spoken on the phone before, and so my goal in these conversations is always to learn how filmmakers get their careers going and how they get started. So my first question, and then basically I don't do an introduction because we're going to find all out about you as we go along, and people have read your introduction anyway, and that's why they showed up. So my first question always is, when was the first time you knew you wanted to be a filmmaker?
I think it started when I was really young. I was always drawn to art, drawing. I was making cartoons and comic books when I was a kid, probably about starting around 10. Always loved watching movies. I remember I saw Jurassic Park probably when I was way too young. And that was really exciting for me as a little boy who loved dinosaurs to see. I'd seen them at the museum, but to see them on screen. And then I had the thought, well, someone actually made that. Someone had to put that together. I think that came a little bit later, but that was really exciting for me. And for the longest time, I thought I wanted to be a cartoonist. That's what I told everybody. I was drawing comic books. And so I started down that path. And then once I got to high school, I got my first camera. It was a mini DV cam, nothing fancy, nothing that you'd want to watch now.
You started out in digital world.
Yeah, exactly.
In film world, so.
I started digital and then took a step back to film, and that's we'll go on in that conversation, but where I would like to head moving forward. But yeah, so I got my first camera when I was 14, started filming things, and I was in an AP art class, and I told my art teacher that I wanted to put together some videos, and I knew that we had one computer with, at the time, Final Cut Pro on it, but no one in my school knew how to work it. It was something that they got with a grant, and no one really had ever used it. So this was before the time of the prevalence of YouTube tutorial videos. So I couldn't just get on, there was blogs, but the art teacher literally just threw the Final Cut manual at me and said, figure it out. So I was thrown headfirst into, taking DV tapes and digitizing them and learning how to cut. And then by the time I was a junior in high school, I decided that I wanted to pursue film. I told my parents. I come from a very small town in western Kansas that no one's ever heard of. And there's no path to be a filmmaker out there. No one's ever heard of that before. And I was incredibly fortunate to have two parents that supported my dream, saw that I was very serious about it, and they pushed me to continue to do it. So I started looking at film schools my senior year of college, or my senior year of high school, to go to college.
Right.
And I ended up going to the what's that?
Which one did you pick?
I ended up going to the University of Kansas. They have a film and media studies program there, so it's not a very popular or known school, but just recently it's gotten a little bit more buzz because one of the primary faculty members is Kevin Wilmot, who won an Oscar for Black Klansman, for writing Black Klansman 2 years ago.
Wow. That's an amazing film.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but obviously the University of Kansas had a great appeal because it was up the road.
Yeah, it was just far enough. I lived on the opposite side of the state, so it was about a 5.5 hour drive.
Oh, that's fun.
And so it was far enough from home, yet still capitalized on the in-state tuition, which didn't start me off in life in debt. So I was very fortunate to be able to do that.
I think I picked college based on, is it far enough away?
Yeah.
That was basically the main criteria. How far away can I get?
Yeah.
So you were doing film and media studies. What did they mean by that? What did they mean by media studies?
So when I initially went and toured the facilities, they had a sound stage, and I saw what I consider real filmmakers. They were real filmmakers, but coming out of editing bays, and I was just like enamored by that. So I was like, this is where I want to go. And when I got there, I found out that their program is more it's more on the studies side, so it's more about theory than it is production, though they do have production classes and they are upping that now. But at my time there, I was able to take production courses, but it's kind of like heavily focused on the theory of filmmaking, so a lot more of classroom settings, and dissecting films and talking about films, which was a great background. But having said that, a lot of what I actually learned from college was outside of class, was finding like-minded people, being introduced to them. It was the first time I was around anyone else who wanted to make films, and not just my friends or family I was forcing to do it. So being around those type of people and being able to, like, outside of class, get our hands on equipment and just go film things, go make things.
Plugged in over there.
And two of those bonds actually have evolved into a partnership for me and my production company,
Really?
which we started 10 years ago, called Rockhaven Films. We met in college, have worked together, for the better part of a decade now.
That's great. And so many people say that is the purpose of going to film school, is to meet people that you want to work with. One of my favorite directors is John Sayles.
I love John Sayles.
You love John Sayles? Oh, that's great, because when you talk about the technology, I know how old you are.
Yeah.
The fact that you got to work on Final Cut Pro tells me,
Right.
oh, it was that year, and
Yeah.
because I've told this story before, but I raised like $50,000, $60,000 to buy an edit suite for our media arts center, and about a year later, Final Cut Pro came out, and I just wanted to throw that $60,000 behemoth out the window. So
It's always how it works. The minute you pull the trigger on a piece of equipment, the
Yeah.
next best thing comes out.
yeah, for about $3,000 or something.
Yeah.
But the John Sayles said that after he made his first film, which I think is Liana, he said he realized he was either going to have to learn how to raise money or get a new set of friends.
Yeah. It's helpful to know, but to do both, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. So you found your people and you started your company. So what did you start working on?
So right out of school, the intent was always to make feature-length films. That was what we wanted to do. We knew it. But at the time, if you would have asked me, I would have said, as long as I was making money doing some kind of, film-related activity, I would have been happy.
Well, I think that's smart too.
Yeah. So around that same time, I had gotten a summer job my junior year of college with a teen travel organization called Rustic Pathways. And what they do is they take groups of teenagers from all over the US and all over the world, actually, and they travel to 17 countries around the world. and they do a mixture of philanthropy, education, and like adventure trips. And they're non-denominational, so it has no religious affiliation. And I got a job for them. I remember having my interview, and I had a friend who worked for their company, and I was interviewing for the job, and they were really just looking to get summer staff, which is essentially glorified summer, like camp counselors.
Yeah.
In a different country, really.
Right.
And I was on their website and I was like, you guys don't have any video, you need video. I was trying to hard sell them on video, and they were just like, yeah, whatever, kid, just come do your job. So they hired me, and I took my DSLR camera. I think I had a 60D at the time, a Canon 60D. And the first week I went to Thailand and then eventually to Cambodia. And my first week in Cambodia, I made 3 videos. I stayed up all night editing videos for the end of the week. And I showed the country director, and he said, well, if they're not going to utilize you, I will. So he's put me on different trips, and I went all around Cambodia that summer making videos for Rustic Pathways. And ultimately that led to a larger discussion with the owner of the company, who said, do you have more people who can do this like you? And I said, I do. I have 2 other guys that I work with. And so by the time we graduated our senior year, we came out of college with a formed company and our first big client as Rustic Pathways.
Wow.
We started all the video content that Rustic Pathways had.
That's great. It sounds like partly luck and partly, how cool is that?
Yeah, it was right place at the right time for sure.
Traveling and but you sold it to them. You sold them on the idea. They weren't, there was no ad in the paper that said we're looking for filmmakers who want to travel around the world to make, right? You sold them on that. And I just think that's great that you had that so soon after college,
Yeah, and during my time in college, I was working with the athletic department, and this was like right on the verge or right on the edge of kind of like the DSLR revolution. Like the 5Ds, the 7Ds, the 60Ds were just coming out, and everyone was enamored by the pretty bokeh. You can make things go out of focus behind the head, So we were just starting to use that and capitalize on those prosumer tools that were just coming out and able to make like really sharp images. So I was working with the athletic department, had an internship there. We were doing some reality TV shows about the football team, which our football team was terrible at the time, but we were still making videos about them.
Videos were better.
Yeah. And I was able to do a couple of videos with the basketball team. KU basketball is a pretty big deal. And then I really cut my teeth there. The guy I was working under, his name's Micah Brown. He went on to start his own company and produce like ESPN 30 for 30 documentaries. But he really taught me a lot about being able to do a little bit of everything, to be able to shoot with the edit in mind, and then to take it into, that at that time we were using Premiere Pro, take it into Premiere Pro, be able to cut. And, it helps you think about your shots when you have to edit your own stuff, because you know exactly what you need. And it's something that you can learn a lot quicker if you just do it over and over and over again. So I took that skill set in the sports world and applied it to travel. And that's kind of how those jobs came about. And then my 2 partners were able to travel as well at that time. And we did that for 7 summers. They operate mainly in the summer. We did that for 7 summers, traveling with Rustic Pathways and, building up their video content library.
Wow. So today, do you still do that kind of work?
We still do some commercial work. Yeah, it's definitely grown. With the whole Rustic Pathways model, the travel model was what we call like the one-man band. You were carrying around your camera, lenses, your sound equipment, and doing it at all, and then taking it back and editing it. Now our commercial productions are a little bit more, they're a little bit more beefed up than that. They look like a legitimate film set, but we held on to that, for quite a while.
I worked on a TV series at one point, and it was completely common to have the title they gave them was producer shooter. So they produced the piece, they shot it, they were on their own. They were embedded with this was a show called Addicted, so they were embedded with the addicts. I mean, crazy. So anybody who's thinking about working in reality television, it's fine so long as you're doing house makeovers, but
Yeah.
anything difficult, oof, I would avoid it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just so common to have people doing everything. So when did you actually get to the point where you were like, okay, we're really going to make this feature film? How long after college was it?
So I graduated in 2012, and my business partner and DP were working on a script together, and it was a Western, a true Western. And my grandparents own a ranch in eastern Colorado, a wide sprawling ranch with Pikes Peak set as the backdrop. I mean, very picturesque. And I knew that we would have a location, and, the way that we had always done it was a very guerrilla filmmaking style, coming out of college. I know I think my sophomore year, Rebel Without a Crew from Robert Rodriguez. That was very influential. I'm sure so many people have referenced that, talked about it, read it. However, it just it clicked with me. Lights, went off. And so we always decided that we were going to try to up the production value with whatever we had in hand at hand, or try to get things. And so, we have this beautiful ranch in Colorado. We love Westerns. We wanted to make a Western. So we wrote a script, and we were looking into seriously making that around 2013, 2014. And then we realized exactly how much putting actors on horses was going to cost us in terms of insurance and locations and taking care of horses. And so that one kind of got shelved a little bit, because I knew that we had a very unique opportunity, I felt, coming out of college. I should say that my business partner is Ian Trimble, is a director of photography, and my other business partner, Edward Shore, is an editor. So we had a good 1, 2, 3 punch, with me being a writer, director, and a DP and an editor, and we could all do a little bit of everything. We could all kind of handle some producing. So I knew that I wanted to make a film in Kansas or around Kansas before we all went our different ways. We also had a lot of crew that we worked in college that had kind of specialized, and I knew that we could, get something done in this time period if we acted now. So after the Western was out, I decided, I have an idea. I have this idea that I've had.
I also wanted to, before you go on to the different choice you made, now that you've learned about distribution, I think it was also another good reason to not make a Western.
Yeah, they don't sell like they used to. Let's just say that.
Yeah. I have a client who had a film set in 1890, sort of in the West, and it's called Homestead. And he would always say, "I'm making a Western." I say, "No, you're not.
Making a period piece.
You're making a horror film, and people will find out what the times is and all of that later, but you're not making a Western." He'd be like, "Oh yeah, okay."
Yeah. Yeah.
So what did you finally decide that you could afford the production insurance for?
So I had an idea. It had been with me for a long time. I grew up in a very small town, a town of about 4,000 people. And in that town, there was 3 banks. And at one point, I had a friend who had gone away one summer and went to his grandparents' house and had watched, I think, Ocean's 11 12 times on DVD to keep himself busy. And he came back, and he was just joking about, oh, we could plan a heist here in our small town. He was just joking. He's just a kid. But that always stuck with me. So that was the core of this idea that I'd been carrying around for probably 10 years at that point. And so I went off and I decided that I was going to write a small town crime thriller, because I knew that my town that I lived in, if everything went according to plan, my parents still live there. That's where I was born and raised, prominent members of the community. I knew that I could go in and ask for a lot and be received with open arms, or at least that was my hope. So I went off and I wrote a script that took place in the small town, was set there. It was a small town crime thriller, eventually called Goodland, which is the name of the town, and is the real name of the town. And that ended up being a little bit of serendipity calling it Goodland, because I think that helped with the marketing, actually.
Oh,
We
yeah?
can talk about that later, but
Okay, all right, we'll get there. I never think to show video, but I think it might be fun if we show the trailer
oh yeah,
for
okay.
Goodland. Can you access it faster than I can? Do you have access to it? I'm sorry to throw this
No,
at you, but let's do that. Uh, um, no, I have to show it because I'm the host.
okay.
So
I can send you a link if that works.
Oh, that would help. Yeah, because when I go to Amazon, it says "watch again," and it's not giving me the option to get to the trailer. But I think that it would be really useful for people to see just even the trailer, to just have an idea in their minds, because when you say the the small town and the heist, I think it'd be really nice for people to just see the way that it looks. How did you send it to me, Josh?
I just dropped a link in the chat.
In the chat. Okay, there it is. All right.
So, what do you got for me?
Oops, sorry. Let me share my screen. Okay, here goes. Trailer on Zoom.
So, what do you got for me?
Just a drifter who wandered into town and showed up dead in a field.
Got any idea who he might be?
That's that old boy we dropped off outside of town yesterday. Drifted into town a couple days ago, and we tried to help him on his way. Anyone new on the scene?
So, how long will you be staying with us, Mr. Raines?
5 nights.
It's just enough time to get comfortable.
I hope not.
Any hard evidence?
He had a pack on him. Coyote strung out all the contents.
Well, everything else is here. We are not missing anything.
So why are you taking all these pictures, huh? Is it like look at these small town country idiots, how they live? Is that it?
It's for a book.
What kind of book?
You know, the rest of the town hasn't caught on quite yet, but I'm afraid it'll be too late before they do.
Caught on to what?
I've never been one for conspiracy theories, Mike.
Well, today might be a good day to get one started.
You had your chance to walk, and I warned you, it'd be your last.
I didn't do anything. I didn't. I promise I didn't.
You have no idea who I am.
So far, it's just a feeling. No point in getting everybody riled up over a feeling.
I wish I could find the shot that I love so much with the
Not quite yet, but I'm afraid it'll be too late.
the shot with
It's
the
for a book.
What kind of...
what is it called? That big machine thing?
Oh, the combine.
The combine. Yeah, yeah. That's the kind of stuff that I just love. Just love it.
Yeah, that's funny. So I wrote that script, and that's where I grew up, a very rural community, very agricultural, community. And I grew up on a farm myself. I knew, like I said, that if I wrote this script, I could write it to locations that I already knew. And it was also I chose it for a reason. I mean, I chose very specific locations for a reason. We decided we wanted a very, a hyper real aesthetic. When you actually go to this town, there's a Walmart and a McDonald's and all the modern, things that we shot around completely. We just wanted to cut it out. We want it to look like like you were watching, maybe like a Coen Brothers film was a huge inspiration. I think that's probably evident in the trailer, but we wanted to really, stylize it in this way that was kind of like this town that was, could be now, could be, 50 years ago. There's cell phones in the film. They play a prominent role, but everything else was a little bit more hyper stylized to kind of fit that way. And so I wrote this, and then I took it to a producer who was based in Kansas at the time, Jay Hampton. He came on and helped produce the film. And I took him the script, and he knew what we were trying to do, and he read it, and he goes, "Yeah, I like it, but combines, those are expensive." And if anyone who doesn't know, I mean, a combine is, a grain harvester. I think everyone probably knows the people call them different things, different places.
You grew up on a farm.
Yeah. So he's like, "Yeah, but combines are expensive." And I was like, "Combines are the least of our problems." I got combines for days. So we were able to take the script that I wrote, and I went back to my community before we started. And the first thing I did was I talked to my parents. I said, "Hey, this is what I want to do." I did a little backwards. I wrote the script first, so I'd already spent a lot of time doing it. I figured if my hometown didn't work out, some other small town would probably, be a setting. But I took it back to my parents, who were still living in town, and I said, "This is what I want to do. This is the type of film it's going to be." I was like really upfront with them. And I said, "If we do this, it's going to be a thing. It's not just like me coming home with my college friends and a camera. Like, it's going to be a thing." And they're like, they fully supported it. They said, "Go for it." So after I got the go ahead from them, I went ahead and I went to the city council. I talked to the city council meeting. I got police involvement, on board, so that they helped provide even some props, and the light bar on top of the cop car. That was a decommissioned light bar that we were able to get from the police. And so I had great cooperation with the community, and I really couldn't have done it without it. In fact, there's a scene later on in the movie that takes place on Main Street. It's a beautiful brick Main Street. My fiance always jokes that I grew up in Mayberry. So, I mean, that's kind of, picture
Goodland.
that. Yeah. Picture that brick Main Street, little shops. And we were able to close down Main Street for an entire day to film on location. And it's not that big of a deal. You just reroute people one block, and, a lot of people came out and even watched us film. Some people ignored the cones completely and drove through anyways, but that's just the type of, place that it was.
Uh-huh. The other thing about that setting, I think, that is so important, or this is how I see it, is that we're living in this strange time of such great division in the country, and so somebody like you who comes from rural America and is able to tell a film set in rural America, to me that's very satisfying, just right there, just because there's this sort of division and very little communication going back and forth. So I really appreciate it, and I feel as though I've become a fan of Taylor Sheridan's work.
Yeah, he's huge.
Yeah, I mean, okay, he's really good, but I think also that I think there's a sort of longing to know what that side of the world is like.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. My little Taylor Sheridan story is I was almost done with post-production when the first trailer for Hell or High Water came out. And I saw the trailer and I wanted to cry, because I was just like, he did it better in so many ways. It's a totally different film, but at the same time, I was just like, we actually wrapped, and my DP and I wrapped. And then a day later, we went and saw Sicario, another written by Taylor Sheridan film. And we went and saw Sicario on the big screen, and we were talking about Roger Deakins' cinematography, and that's very implanted in my memory. And then again, when I finished post-production, or was just about to, I saw the Hell or High Water trailer. It took me a while to actually watch Hell or High Water, and now it's probably in my top 10 films.
Yeah. I love it. I love that film. But I think in a way, Goodland has more of the small town feel even than Hell or High Water, but it's still definitely same landscape. Did you know before you wrote Goodland that it was a good idea for distribution to write a thriller?
I did know that like that genre would sell. That was my hope. And I also
How did
talked
you know that? Where did you learn that from?
kind of talking with my producer and just doing, research on my own. I know that like horror films and thriller films typically, especially for first films, have the ability to kind of like separate from the pack a little bit more, or that was kind of my understanding at that point. And I was pointing towards a lot of people who had done it before. I had looked at I studied Coen Brothers' Blood Simple. That was their breakout film. I studied Danny Boyle's Shallow Grave. That was his first film. Even, it's quite a bit different, but Christopher Nolan's Following, I really went back and look at filmmakers' first films, because a lot of the times they were made in pressure cooker situations where they were underfunded, and it forced them to be more creative than they would have been had they had a large budget. And I really broke those films down. I think Blue Ruin was another one that was really big at the time. It had kind of just broken out as I was starting this process. So that was another really good film to point to and say, like, this is the scope of film I want to do. It's a genre pick. It's not horror, but I want it to definitely be, kind of that mystery crime thriller vibe.
That's great, looking at those filmmakers, and that they started with those thrillers. Another one I think of is Duel, which is whose
Spielberg.
film? Spielberg's first film, yeah, which is another thriller. And but the I find that most filmmakers don't know this about picking a genre that you can actually get to market for your first film. So I just think it's really great that Dennis Hopper, yeah, that you made that choice. And what did your producer do? What did your producer bring to the film?
He had a track record for getting films made in Kansas. He had actually produced two of Kevin Wilmot's films that were shot in Kansas. Jayhawkers and Destination Planet Negro were shot in Kansas with similar budgets, a lot of the same restraints. And so I knew that he was someone who had that experience to not only get a film made of that size, but get it made in the state that we were in. And we weren't going to be getting any tax incentives, but we realized that the trade-off was all the in-kind, goods and services that we could get in Kansas was going to outweigh even just going one state to the south to Oklahoma and trying to set up shop there.
Were there no tax incentives in Kansas, or was it just that your budget wasn't high enough to
Our
meet?
budget wasn't high enough, but when we were starting out looking at the thing, it's like, do we want to like try to raise this much money? This will set us back a couple of years, or can we do it for much less and strip it back? And that was the decision that was made.
Very smart, because I find the people who make the decision to wait and raise the money, the films don't get made. Obviously, that's a very blanket statement.
Yeah.
Tends to be what happens, it just sort of goes on and on and on and on, instead of like just get a small amount of money, make the film. So how did you end up getting distribution for Goodland?
So we went into production. We shot for 17 days. Most of that was on location in Western Kansas. Some of that was back in kind of the Kansas City area, which is where I was living at the time. A lot of the interiors were shot there. And then went into post-production. We knew just that the timing, this film had to be shot in the fall. It had to be shot in October based on the corn. So we knew that. So I knew that I would have a full year for post before kind of like running the festival circuit. So that was our target date. So we wrapped production at the end of October of 2015. And then from there, we had a couple days. They weren't even reshoots, they were pickup shots. We had a couple days of some pickup shots, some inserts, a couple things that came after we had already started post and saw where there were some gaps. And we were finished with the edit. We had plenty of time. We were finished with the edit, and then we started submitting to festivals for a 2017 festival run. And I just used Movie Maker's 50 festivals worth the money or whatever their like tagline is as kind of my guideline. And some of those get weeded out with, some of them are for just documentaries, some of them are just for short films, so on and so forth. And so I submitted. We didn't get into a ton of festivals, which was fine, but we got into 3 of those top 50 that we were shooting for. So I had a small festival run in 2017, and then at the end of that,
how did the film do in festivals? Because I always wonder if genre films are popular in festivals.
You know, we didn't get into that many festivals, to be honest. And the festivals that we did get in, I feel like it was received really well. We were nominated for Best Picture at 2 of them. And that was the Julian Dubuque International Film Festival in Iowa, which I always plug this festival because it's a great little gym in the middle of Iowa that, you know, it was on the list of the Movie Maker top 50, but if you're looking for a great festival, that's one of them. And
wow. What makes it great?
There's just, they kind of like have the screenings all over their main street in different locations. So it's almost like you're just like hopping from theater to theater to location. Everyone was like super welcoming. It was just it felt like a really good community to be in. And there was a lot of, I don't know, I feel like they programmed really good festivals. I mean, that year I can speak on. And then also Best International Picture at Oaxaca Film Festival in Mexico. And then that was the year that Oaxaca got hit by an earthquake. So we ended up not actually, the festival got canceled and we ended up not attending. Then at the end of the festival run, I knew that I wanted to screen it in my hometown at the movie theater. We have a 1-screen theater in town, and I knew that I wanted to do that. So I was in the middle of setting that up, and prior I had read a book by Ben Yenny, who at the time was a producer's rep. And I read his book about the American film market, and I thought maybe this is something I want to do to see if I could get distribution. I really didn't know anything. I was super green at the time. So I'm reading this book, and I just like,
the book is a good start.
yeah. And I got on Twitter, and I actually just, sent him a direct message, and I was just like, hey, read your book, thought it was great. Just wanted to let you know, I just finished a film. Here's the trailer if you want to check it out. I really appreciate what you do. And he checked the message, and he got back to me, and we actually started up a conversation, and he became interested in repping the film. So I signed a contract with Ben, and then Ben took the film to the American film market. And from there we were able to get distribution.
So can you explain what a producer's rep does with a film?
So a producer's rep is someone who is vital if you're someone like me who is a filmmaker and doesn't know a whole lot about the distribution side of things. I think Ben really came in, saw potential in the film, loved the trailer, really liked the film, he bought in, but then he was able to take this film, and he has connections to distributors. He's able to like take it personally with connections he's built over the years and show it to distributors that he knows and trusts, so that I wasn't just signing a deal with someone I'd never, met before, didn't know if they were going to pay me. He could be a filter for the information that was coming in. He could take the offers and look at them and say, like, you don't want to sign this because X, Y, and Z, this is a much better deal. They're only offering you this, you actually need this. And I had no idea. I was probably this close to going on Distribber, which we all would have been.
Would have been the end of that.
Would have been the end of that. So he saved me from that. And I'm, incredibly grateful for what he was able to do. He took it to the American film market. And like I said, we got distribution. We got distribution with a company at the time was called Parade Deck Films. It was later, became Ammo, or it didn't become, but the owner of Parade Deck went to Ammo and took the film with it. So Ammo Content is the distributor of the film, and they were able to get it on Showtime. It ran on Showtime for 2 years, and other deals following that, both international and domestic.
How did it work out in terms of the money? Because you were talking about you made the decision to not raise as much money, but to move faster. So how did it work out? If you don't want to say the numbers, that's fine. But
No, that's totally fine. So I was able to, I was able to put in some of my own money that I'd been saving, knowing that I was going to be making a film, and some private investors. And then we ran a Kickstarter campaign, which I was at first opposed to. I didn't want to do that. I thought I had some funding fall through, and my producer says, if you can't come up with X amount of dollars, we're running a Kickstarter campaign. And I said, deal. And I took the challenge, and I didn't come through. So we ended up running a Kickstarter. And not to go off the question, but this kind of comes back to how I think A, running that Kickstarter, and B, titling the film Goodland actually became one of our best marketing moves.
Yes.
Because we ran a Kickstarter with a film called Goodland, and although it's a very small town in a state that most people consider a flyover state,
Right.
they're totally underrepresented in the film.
Yeah.
And so anyone who lived in Goodland, had ever lived in Goodland, who ever drove through Goodland, who lived in a neighboring town, who even lived in Kansas, I think shared it on Facebook. And it became a thing. And, in our little pocket of the world, people really latched onto it, and it really just skyrocketed the numbers. We met our goal in 2 days, I think 2 or 3 days on Kickstarter. And then after that, there was just this built-in audience and interest in a film. I think at first people were kind of thought it was funny. They were making jokes what's there in Goodland to make a movie about, and so people were following out of curiosity. And I think that really helped.
Actually, how much did you raise on Kickstarter?
I believe it was just shy of 13,000. We really just needed a little bit of a sliver. We didn't need, we just needed a little bit of some, to finish it out, I guess.
Lights. No.
So I think it was just right at 13,000, but I think we set the bar at 12.
Yes.
So I'd have to go back and look at the exact numbers.
Yeah,
I'm not lying.
because it is this thing, sort of piecing a bit here, a bit, your savings a bit here, and so how long did it take you? This may be another way of asking the question. How long did it take you to make the money back?
It ended up taking about 2 years. About a year and a half after we got distribution. So we signed our distribution deal at the end of 2017. And then we were in the black about a year and a half into that.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's really great. I was, on the other side, because I've also known Ben for years and worked with him now for several years. And he was very excited about the film, and I was hearing about it, and glad that it did well. There was a question that I had wanted to ask before. Now I completely lost it. That doesn't usually happen to me. But with the success of that film, have you started working on a second feature, or what are you doing there?
Yeah, I was kind of having this conversation before the actual Zoom call started, but there's always this pressure as soon as you finish something, everyone asks you what's next. It's like you just gave your life to something for 5 years, and I just ripped out my heart and put it on stage for you, and took you 90 minutes to consume it, and you're asking what's next. Having said that, there are things in the works. I have several scripts that I've written to kind of capitalize on my next project. However, I haven't pushed anything into production quite yet, but there are definitely things in the works happening right now.
So I'd love to hear then how you ended up working with Ben after this experience. As I said, I've heard it from Ben's side, but I like to hear it from your side. I just remembered my question. So in his book, I swear he says this. I could be wrong, but I swear he says, if you're a filmmaker, don't go to AFM.
Right. Yeah, I'm pretty
He
sure he
does
does
that?
say that. And
Okay,
that's,
good,
I
good.
read that.
He says, don't go to AFM. They don't want you. And it's a very interesting thing because AFM markets very heavily to filmmakers to go. But it's not really fair, you know? I mean, they're telling filmmakers you can go there and you can find producers and you can find the money to get your films made, and it's not really true. But it definitely is a place where business happens. It's just that business happens between producers, reps, sales agents, and distribution companies and so on. But filmmakers are usually not there with a finished film, and they usually sort of have no business being there. But it is a place definitely where business does really happen. It's just I can't recommend for filmmakers to go. One of my clients here, we did all go, and we had a great time, you know. But he had a finished film, and we had another one of my clients had an almost finished film. So I think it makes it a bit different. But so yeah, how did you end up working with Ben, and how did all of that come together?
So after Goodland, we had worked together quite a bit on, the release of that film. There had definitely been a trust and even a friendship built up during that process. And, it was successful. And then the opportunity came. I don't know exactly whose idea it was first, probably his, definitely his, I guess, to maybe to start our own distribution company based on what we were seeing kind of in the marketplace. And there was even, I think part of this, we were talking about it before the pandemic happened, but I really do have to attribute the pandemic for like the catalyst of like pulling me in and involving me as much as I got involved, probably because nothing was being shot, or very little was being shot. It didn't feel like a time that I wanted to, I was working on scripts, but it didn't feel like a time I wanted to go out and really try to, fight to put together a production and shoot during that time. And we're talking a little over a year ago now is when this started happening. So, the idea of all the contacts that we knew and several other business partners knew and could come in together, and our skill sets, it was kind of like, for me, it was like Rockhaven, my production company 2.0, but on the other side of things, it was everyone that we knew who was involved had a different skill set. We would come together and be able to do this thing, which is Mutiny Pictures, which is the distribution company that we started. And what I bring to the table with that is less on the business side and just more with practical deliverables and trailers, and helping with the assets and the arts, and just doing all of that side of things that a lot of filmmakers don't think about until they're into production or in post-production and scrambling to get all their deliverables together. So with Mutiny, my role in that is to take the finished films and deliverables from the filmmaker, bring them in-house, and then get them prepped and ready to send off to anywhere that the film gets placement.
What is the most common problem that you see with a finished film when it gets delivered to you?
Okay, so there's several things that I'll say, and this is, I think, really, really good to know before you even, start rolling camera.
Yeah.
Is art. Art is the most one of the, this sounds like a very businessy thing to say, but art is one of the most important things that you can do for your film. And you're not necessarily going to be in charge of putting together your own art, but the more assets you have that you can get from the set, from the film, from your actors on location, in costume. And what I'm talking about by assets, I mean schedule into your schedule a photo shoot with them, get high res photos of them in different poses and different stances in different areas against a blank backdrop, against the backdrop of your set. Just get as many like raw images as you possibly can collect in that time, so that the people on the back end, it won't necessarily be you, but we can make the art that you will need to sell your film. You have a 1 inch by 2 inch thumbnail on a streaming service to let someone know that they need to watch your movie.
Yep.
And we have to be able to, put something there. And, sometimes you can do a screen grab, but it's always way better if you have the assets coming in. Always.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest things before you wrap. Make sure you get those things.
And that's so interesting. That is so not what I thought you were going to answer. I thought you were going to say it's usually there's something wrong with sound, or there's,
Oh, well, that's a whole nother bag. The
Yeah,
film
yeah, yeah.
has to pass QCs. So that's less about my opinion and more just like, is it technically sound? Make sure your sound is good for sure. People are more willing to put up with a bad image than bad sound.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then would you advise filmmakers to make their own trailers, or leave it to you to make the trailer?
The thing is if you're going to put your time and resources into making a trailer, watch a trailer, watch a bunch of trailers, like find trailers that are like your film. And I'm not saying copy them, but look to see what they do. Like, just like filmmakers have to do, or part of the filmmaking process for me is studying other films, breaking down shots, breaking down sequences. If you're going to make your own trailer, if you have to, which I think it's not a bad idea, because to take it back a step, if you have a good trailer, it will also help sell your film. It'll help you get distribution.
Right.
The distributor may take that and completely revamp it, but if you can come to them with a trailer that looks really good and they're like, I think I can sell this, yeah, they might tweak it, but they might change it entirely, but they're probably going to look at your trailer before they look at anything, and they might even say, based on the trailer that they see, we're not interested, and not necessarily even by the actual cut of the trailer. Don't get me wrong there. They may just like look and say like, oh, this is not of a certain quality per se, possibly. Usually it goes much further than that. They're gonna watch the film if they're seriously talking to you. But what I would say is to go back to cutting a trailer. I think it's a good idea to try to cut a trailer if you can. Don't get married to it. It'll probably change once you get a distributor. But the rules I would say is watch trailers that are like your film. See what a trailer does. Sound design in trailer is incredibly important.
Oh gosh, yes.
If you watch a trailer with no sound, you can see the cuts, but when you turn on the sound, I think, was it 2 years ago, the Tom Cruise Mummy movie was accidentally released without the music track on the back. And you could see how kind of lame a trailer looks without good music and sound design and the bombs and the bangs and all of the other sounds that get layered in. So watch a trailer, cut a trailer that looks like a trailer, and keep it short. That's the most important thing. Hollywood films are going to cut 2.5-minute trailers. That's where they're at. Keep yours at 90 seconds or below, because that's about the amount of attention that you're probably going to be able to hold with a teaser trailer.
I actually want to open it up for questions, and I'd love for you to come on video, raise your hand, and let me see that you have a question. But I just wanted to say, Josh, that was actually a trick question, because your trailers are going to be way better than most filmmakers' trailers. Whenever I one of my clients finishes their film and they make a trailer, and I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah, that is true. That is absolutely true. So but I guess I'm posing it as a challenge.
Okay.
Whenever I get, we get a queue of films that we're reviewing, and it's like, sometimes I watch a trailer and I'm like, well, the trailer's not good, but there's something here, and that goes in a list. But then it's always great to hit a trailer that's like, wow, this trailer rocks, and now I'm really excited about this movie. So I wouldn't spend a lot of time and resources on it. I guess this is more if you
that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
If you have access to cutting your film or whatever it is, don't pay a professional editor thousands of dollars to do it, or because we're going to redo it anyways, probably.
Exactly. I had a client a couple of years ago made a horror film, and they made their own trailer, and it was terrible. And they were just trying to like tell the story of the film,
Yeah.
And I said, no. This is what you want in your trailer. You want it to say, "This is a scary movie. This is a scary movie. This is a scary movie."
Title.
And he's like, "Oh, I got it."
Yeah.
So who has a question? Stephen, I'm seeing you there with that great smile. Do you have a question? And I've never met you before. Do you have a question? Stephen Bernier, is that your name, Stephen Bernier?
Actually, no, I don't have a question. I kind of joined late.
So, you're in trouble now.
Excuse me?
I said you're in trouble now.
Oh, okay. So I just want to make sure I understand, Joss. You have the production company, and Joanne, you're the consultant?
I'm a business coach, and Josh is a filmmaker, but he also now works for a distribution company. So he's getting to see both sides of the landscape.
Oh, okay.
Filmmaker and now working in the distribution side as well.
Got it. Okay. Sorry, I came in late. So
that's all right. That's all right. Lovely to have you.
Okay. Will you be doing like a little introduction of everybody so we know who's here and what they do?
I don't think we'll have time for that, but introduce yourself in the chat. I'd love to learn more about you.
Okay, I'll put it in there.
Yeah.
Thanks for talking.
Cool. Rolf, do you have a question?
No, right. Big cool questions. The only one that comes to mind is something that always comes up for me a little bit, which is the question of future proofing in terms of resolution, because technology is always advancing all the time, and what you might have taken for granted as high resolution 5 years ago only could suddenly become, oh, it's only 4K, and what if you can't show it in a festival anymore? So I was wondering if you have any thoughts on that question, like how far ahead should you try to anticipate? Do you now have to shoot in 8K to make sure you're future proof for the next 10 years, or any thoughts on that?
Honestly, this is also coming from a production standpoint,
which is what I'm obviously interested
in,
because of the cost is kind of exponential, right? Well, to some extent.
Yeah, you're going to be paying more for storage. It's going to take longer to dump the footage. Your editing, your proxies, everything is going to take longer. I personally am on the train that 4K is great for right now, and I don't think 4K is going anywhere within the next 5 years. So if you're looking beyond 5 years, maybe, but I doubt it. Most projectors in theaters aren't even projecting at 4K right now. Most projectors are 2K projectors. They will start advertising once they get a 4K projector. They'll act like it's a big deal, and it is great. But a lot of DCPs and projectors are still projecting at 2K. And then a lot of the deliverables that I'm delivering to the big time, like I'm delivering 1920 by 1080 to Showtime. That's what they're taking.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so, I realize that for television, it's not such a big deal because very few are watching at 4K on TV still. But it seems obvious that festivals would be the more critical for resolution. But Joanne, you're nodding, shaking your head.
No, because they don't have the equipment in the theaters. I mean, the example I like to think of is that Dolby has its headquarters, in San Francisco, and they have a cinema there which is not open to the public, except that they show about 2 to 4 films a year at the San Francisco Film Festival when we're back to normal. So they show films in their Dolby theater with capacity to play Dolby Atmos, but the films they're playing don't have any of that.
Right. Yeah.
In the film, So it's just a very interesting thing that. But as Josh was just saying, if you have a film in 4K, you're way ahead of the game.
A 4K master with 5.1 sound is about where the line's drawn. We wouldn't even on the deliverable side, and even on the theatrical side, we have no use for above 4K. I mean,
Do you find anybody cheating and upscaling? So you ended up having to make it in 2K and then you just upscale it and maybe sharpen it and hope nobody notices? Or
yeah,
do you find anyone does that?
I think some of that happens to a certain extent, but like I'm saying, anything in 2K is probably going to be enough, which is just a little bit bigger than 1920 by 1080.
Yeah.
So it's. Thanks. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be an issue, especially I say that now, and maybe in 10 years it will be, but
no
just
doubt.
get exponentially.
Eventually,
yeah. They say 8K resolution is the closest to actual 35 millimeter film stock, so we'll probably get there soon. But it's just like computers, or iPhones that have more computing power than the rover that landed on the moon. So it's like eventually we'll get there with film too.
Josh, it's the top of the hour, so feel free to say goodbye. But does anybody have another question?
I can hang if anyone has questions. Yeah.
Anne Marie has a go. Oh, Paro. And then Paro. Is that how I'm saying your name right?
Yes,
Paro?
it's correct. It's Paro.
Okay. Anne Marie, and then Paro.
This is a distribution question. Has Goodland gone overseas already? And if it is, how's it doing over there?
It did fairly well in certain markets. We signed an airline deal with KLM actually, and then we had a small theatrical run even in the United Arab Emirates. So it did pretty well, and then a couple other territories. So I think okay. I don't get those numbers in real time, so I think it's doing all right. Better than I expected. If you would have told me any of those stats before I shot it, I would have been ecstatic just to hear that. So I'm happy.
Yeah, it seems very random. KLM and United Arab Emirates.
I don't know.
I gotta go. Sorry, guys.
Bye, Rolf. Paro, go ahead. What's your question? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you guys. So how difficult is it to distribute film in the Netflix market?
Netflix?
Yes.
Essentially, and I hate saying it this way, you kind of need to know someone who knows someone. You need to have that connection needs to be probably pretty strong, because they're not just taking pitches from filmmakers usually. So your distributor you would probably want to get a distributor on board first. And if you have a Netflix caliber film or something that's already made, your distributor will know what to do with that. And that should be, an option. And I'm sure they'd be more than happy to take it to Netflix if that's where they're going to go with it.
Paro, one of the things that I would say is that today, maybe 10 years ago, every filmmaker I met said, I want my film to be at Sundance. Today, every filmmaker says, I want my film on Netflix.
Right.
And I met some filmmakers the other day who have a completed series, and they were talking about Netflix. And I said, I really want to see if I could open your minds to the idea that there are other places that I think would do better for your content. And also just one very basic thing to know. If Josh had sold Goodland to Netflix, he might have made about $20,000. And Josh, would I be accurate in saying you've done better than that?
Yeah, we were actually having this discussion just yesterday. It's funny that you brought that up, because the deal that Netflix offered was basically it's going to go to Netflix, and then that's where it's going to live. You can't sign any other deals. Right. And the deal that we ended up signing with Showtime left the door open for a lot of other avenues for us to capitalize on. So we actually made quite a bit more money than we would with Netflix. You're not going to make your investors happy by saying this, but if you want that little badge, that little brand appeal, and that's important to you, and that's on the table, you have to weigh that against making money, and your investors aren't going to be happy with with that, if that's the way you go, I would say.
Yeah. Netflix does not pay as well as other places. And a couple of numbers that I know, because, they're also very secretive about their numbers, but a couple of numbers I know, a friend of mine, Brazilian friend, made like an epic movie, and I don't know what he got paid, but he was very happy with his deal with Netflix. and they put in something like another 70,000 US in marketing. Until he met me and found out that that film could not be seen anywhere except in Brazil. He had sold worldwide rights to Netflix, and he wanted to be entered to compete for a Golden Globe, and we couldn't make it happen because the film wasn't being seen outside the US. So then another friend of mine made a documentary film for $350,000, shot by an Oscar-winning DP, and got a Netflix deal for $80,000, which is a lot, actually, a lot of money for Netflix. But again, nobody outside Brazil has seen it, but she signed a deal that said, it'll say 10 years worldwide rights, and nobody's seeing it. So all I'm saying is that every filmmaker I know today wants their film on Netflix. It's just not necessarily the best thing. It might be, but it's not necessarily. So there are other things to look at. I think it's probably a good time to close, unless anybody has a burning desire question. No, okay. So Josh, Stephen, do you have a question, or are you saying goodbye? Nice to meet you. Josh, thank you so much. I'm so glad that I now have the other side of the story. And next time I talk to Ben, I can tell him I know the truth.
I'm in trouble with Ben now.
In trouble with Ben. No, good luck with everything, and best of luck with everything that Mutiny Pictures is doing. One of the things that Ben has told me is that they called it Mutiny because they felt that it was really time for a mutiny in the industry. And frankly, when I see some of the contracts that filmmakers are getting, it is time for a mutiny in the industry. So anyway, keep making your films. If you would like to talk to me about working with me, I think we put it in the chat. Set up a time on my calendar, and we'll talk. I help filmmakers raise money and get their films made and out there. So it's been great to meet you all, and saying goodbye. Happy Thursday. And it's not tax day. Yay. Somebody had their now people are raising their hands. Should I go, or should I take another question? I'm not sure. Edward, I see you.
Yes, I just want to say something.
Sorry.
It's not really a question. I just want to say to you guys to still keep your defenses up for the COVID. My dad caught the COVID on March, and we both got sick, and my dad just passed away.
No,
so
Edward, I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Sorry to hear that.
Thank you. And I mean, we thought we were at the end of it.
Exactly.
And it's just been terrible. And I was always like, you guys stay careful, be safe all the time. All the time. And this just happened. And
wow, I'm so sorry. And how are you doing? You don't sound so well. You don't sound so well.
Well, it's been a month and a few days that was fighting it. I mean, I was in reasonably good shape when I caught the COVID, but my symptoms were, I was in bad shape. I had, like, everything was harder on me than on my dad, and my dad didn't look that bad. And suddenly he went to sleep and just passed away.
Oh my God.
So he wasn't really coughing. I mean,
Edward
it just was so surprising.
Edward would always come on my calls and at the end say, be careful about COVID. So I'm so sorry to hear that. What a terrible.
I'm sorry, Edward. That's so tough.
Thank you, you guys. So just please, like, keep up your defenses. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know what to say because we went out of our way to be safe. We had the mask all the time.
Right.
We kept our distance from each other for an entire year. I didn't even give a hug to my dad when my brother caught the COVID a year ago and passed away. And I was like, I can hug you, Dad. You know, it's like just in case. And no matter how far we went, this happened. So just stay safe because it is very, very painful. And it was very hard. I mean, I am better, but it was really hard to get better from the COVID. It was very, very hard. It was like waking up like 8-10 times, change the shirt because I'm like all wet from fever and stuff like that. And it's just constant fight to get over it.
Wow.
But I mean, if you're lucky and you are asymptomatic, then you're really lucky. But if you're not that lucky, you're gonna have to fight it hard.
Wow. I'm so sorry, but thank you for letting us know and reminding everybody to be super careful. All right. So
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Edward. Take care.
Take care.
Yep. Bye, everybody.
You too, guys.
I will see you in 2 weeks. We'll be back. Bye-bye.